So, just to work through the order of proceedings, if people can assume their positions, we have some carryover business from the previous council meeting of the 21st of September, and then, of course, we'll proceed to the items for tonight's meeting, the 5th of October. Now, I have received no apologies with respect to the membership councillors tonight, other than, of course, that we know that Councillor Lee and Councillor McCarthy are on leave. Councillor Williams is not too far away. She's with us. Just to repeat, are there any disclosures or conflicts of interest associated with the remaining items, councillors? If none, thank you. We can't confirm because we already did that at the last meeting, and that would be confirmation with respect to 21st of September, which we haven't finalised, so we'll skip item 4. 5 we've already done, 6 we've already done, 7 we've already done, 8 we've already done, which leaves us to item 9, which is the items before us. But I will call for a procedural motion, having received an email this afternoon from Councillor Villa. I'm assuming that she's on her way. She did indicate that it might be pertinent to defer items 9.10, 11, 12, notice of motions in the name of Councillor Trent McCarthy, in order for him to speak to them, given that they have been placed on the notice paper in his name. So if I can please have a motion.
Happy to defer those items, Mr. Mayor.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. Mayor.
So I'll put that to the vote, that items 9.10, 11 and 12 be deferred to the next council meeting. All those in favour? And I think we need another motion now in order to formally move that way.
Move that way, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fontana and Councillor Greco. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And it's carried. Thank you. So, moving to item 9.4, Councillor Lyons.
I move item 9.4 with the following name: Councillor appoint Councillor Julie Williams.
Do I have a seconder, please?
Have a second, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Fontana. Councillor Lyons.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This motion seeks to address some issues about elevating issues regarding domestic violence and the status of women in this council through the creation of a portfolio council. This isn't something Darebin's had previously, but I think it's important that an issue that concerns all of us, that we should move in this direction.
Councillor Fontana.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Greco.
Mr. Mayor, I just got a few questions in relation to this, and maybe through you to the officers. I just want to understand, given that we don't have a protocol established yet for portfolios, how this particular motion then may come in conflict with our established protocols in relation to where the mayor is the spokesperson for the council, and whether there will be any conflict there, and how would we resolve that conflict in the absence of protocols for portfolios?
Yep. Mr. Dev?
Mr. Mayor, yep, we have the media protocol and other protocols and policies around the mayor and his function. This doesn't override that. Probably, if it is resolved today, we need to write terms of reference for that. But other than that, it can be independently resolved, I think, if council so willing to do that.
So,
thank you, Mr. Dev.
just a supplementary question. I'm just not clear about the established protocols that we do have in place, what the impact of this motion will actually be on those established protocols. I'm just not clear on the response that we got from the CEO.
See that we will write terms of reference for this position. Once, if it is approved, we didn't want to preempt that, and we will avoid any conflict with existing policies. If necessary, we have to bring it back to the council.
Would that be, would you...
Councillor Walsh, in the ordinary course of events, you know what the protocols are.
Yes, yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO, would you envisage this coming back to council?
Not in this format. If only the terms of reference require some other changes, we'll bring it back.
And just a further question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering, in relation to other councils that do have portfolios, do they have protocol arrangements around those portfolios? Do we know that? Can we get some information in relation to this?
Mr. Dick?
They do have either terms of reference or protocols around portfolios, the councils, and I have personal experience with that too. The terms of references are written, and that's how it goes.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to speak, therefore, after what I've heard, I'd like to speak against the motion.
Perhaps before you do, because I
That's
saw...
okay, Mr. Mayor.
Fine.
All right. Yep.
I'll allow.
No.
No, that's good.
Look, I thank the CEO for providing us that information, and in regards to this, look, I think that this issue is a very, very important issue in the community. It's a fundamental, one of the fundamental issues that inflicts, I would say, Australian society, given that Australia has an occurrence of violence against women much higher than many other countries of similar stature. So it's a very important issue. I think what we have here before us, whilst I understand the intent behind Councillor Lawrence in terms of trying to elevate the issue of the prevention of domestic violence, I think that the way we're going about it here, it just doesn't sort of tick all the boxes in terms of establishing a process that would enable us to actually enhance the awareness of this issue. The fact is that council does not have portfolios. We have an established portfolio. We haven't established portfolios. We don't have protocols around portfolios. This issue has not been discussed in council. We haven't had a briefing in relation to establishing this particular portfolio position or portfolios per se in council, and so I think it's just a bit premature to try and jump, into a portfolio arrangement around such an important issue as this one, and not do some pre-thinking or better planning, particularly from a governance perspective, so that we tick all the boxes and make sure that we're actually on the right track here in regards to this issue. So I think it's a bit premature to do that, and because there isn't any clarity about, there isn't a terms of reference, there isn't a sense of what that portfolio would have carriage over. Also, it's not clear in terms of when it comes into conflict with your role, Mr. Mayor, as the spokesperson for council. So there's a lot of issues there, and I know that we're going through enormous efforts to try and further advance ourselves from a governance perspective. I think that something like this, an arrangement like this, could create unnecessary encumbrances for us as a council, particularly also from a governance perspective.
You may wish to summarise, Councillor Gregory.
Yeah, I'll sum up, and so just on the basis of that, I think we should just hold back on this and maybe have a discussion amongst councillors, get some more information on how a portfolio arrangement would work, and then proceed.
All right, thank you, Councillor Gregory. Councillor Villa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for my delay. I'm speaking against it because, for the reasons that Councillor Gaetano mentioned, I think we all know that everyone in this chamber is over 100% committed to the issue. We as a council are committed to the issue. We have progressed many ideas and strategies forward to advance this very, very important issue. And I think because it is such an important issue, we need to remove politics from it, Mr. Mayor. And what I mean by that is that I would have liked to have seen more discussion around this. Obviously, the important governance issues that Councillor Gaetano has raised, process, implications. We don't have portfolios in this council. So we want to introduce portfolios. It's a broader conversation that we need to have. And if we need to, I would have liked to have seen some discussion, some consultation maybe at the Women's Committee. We have lots of committees that we seek opinions and advice on, and it hasn't come to my knowledge at the Women's Advisory Committee. I would have liked to have seen a discussion paper on maybe different models on how best to advance our strategic aspirations on this important issue of domestic violence. You know, if you think of someone like Rosie Batty, Mr. Mayor, the reason why she is so effective is because she's not a politician. The reason why she can be so influential is she's a victim of domestic violence. She's a very intelligent woman. She's very articulate. She's across all these different policies. She's a great advocate. And the reason why the community listens to her, and the reason is because she's not a politician. And I think that's a very important point, Mr. Mayor. And that's why I said from the very beginning, it's important that we remove the politics from this important issue. And maybe there's someone in the Darebin community, Mr. Mayor, who has got a more powerful voice, who can advise council, who can advise us, and talk to the minister as well. We haven't explored all the options. And, you know, the community might be a little bit cynical. Why is one councillor, this happens to be this particular, being given the portfolio? I will, Mr. Mayor. Yep. We have politicians, Mr. Mayor. There's an election next year, Mr. Mayor. This is a good way to raise a particular profile of an individual, whoever that may be. That's why I'm saying, for us to have integrity as a council in advocating this very, very important issue, we need to remove the politics from it, and the governance issues, Councillor Gaetano has outlined them very, very well indeed, and I don't wish to...
Thank you very much. Well, mover has right of reply.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just briefly.
So point of order, Mr. Mayor. I believe Councillor Williams wanted to ask to speak on this.
I didn't see the hand, but Councillor Williams.
And also, Ben, I would like to put an amendment as well, but I'm happy to let Councillor Williams speak and then put my amendment.
Well, let's wait your turn then. Councillor Williams.
After being in Queensland, I guess the last few weeks, and attending to Tara's funeral in Queensland after the bashing of her ex-partner and dying at the hands of him, it's been very unfortunate and seeing that we could do more here in Darebin. I've spoken to Rose Batty, I've spoken to the Darebin Women's Advisory Committee, I have spoken to a number of other committees too regarding this matter. I think it's only important that we start to do a bit more, and obviously having a terms of reference will identify and address these type of issues. Also, at the end of the day, the Mayor is actually the head of the spokesperson here in Council, so it doesn't give somebody extra preference over it. It's up to the Mayor at the end of the day what he decides or she decides to do. I believe that the issue here is that it's family violence, it's protecting our children and women, particularly in a domestic situation, and we need to actually focus on it. It's not about having individual profiles, it's just about focusing on an issue that I think we can do more, and I'm very passionate about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Walsh.
Just an amendment that the terms of reference are brought back to Council.
Happy to accept that.
All right. That's acceptable as seconded. All right. So we'll save ourselves some time because we've got quite a bit of it on the agenda this evening, councillors, and with your indulgence, that essentially a third paragraph would note that the terms of reference to be brought back to council, and presumably from that point to formalise, assuming that the motion is passed on the basis of that additional component, to then move forward. So I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I declare it carried. All right. So So moving on to
I'd
9.5.
call for a division, Mr Mayor.
All right. Division. All those in favour of Councillor Lawrence's motion as amended, please stand. I name Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Williams, Councillor Fontana and myself. Are those against? Councillor Greco and Councillor Villela. Thank you very much. Now, 9.5, long-term refugee housing solution in Northcote. Councillor Lawrence.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, I'd seek the indulgence of the meeting to withdraw this motion, given it relates to Rucker Ward and we relied on a councillor from Rucker Ward.
All right. So,
Or defer to next meeting whenever councillor's around.
well, a withdrawal is akin to a deferral in as much as that it can be brought to a subsequent meeting if that is your choice, Councillor Lawrence.
I just seek advice through you as the chair. In terms of notice of motion, are deferrals possible or they actually have to have a withdrawal?
It is, yeah.
Then I'd seek through the meeting to defer this item 2 weeks.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take it as read and we'll move to 9.6, which is car parking in Bedford Road car park. In your name as well, Councillor Lawrence?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I see in there that this probably should have been a GB, but it's probably easier to deal with it straight away. It does resolve around, if I've got a seconder, I'll talk to it.
Seconder?
I'm happy to second it, Mr Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Villela.
Happy to second it.
It does revolve around an issue that's been raised by yourself and by Councillor Villela on a number of times in relation to people with apartments not having anywhere to park. Now here the conflict is more complicated because the car park at the rear of Broadway, adjacent to where some apartments have been built, actually has some restrictions between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. which interferes with people in terms of they can park there during the night, but then they get fines first thing in the morning. And obviously this relates to the fact that there isn't resident parking schemes for apartment dwellers. So, really, I'm asking for some advice on this through the officers to look at solving that particular problem, which can be mitigated by time changes there, or we may have to examine the whole issue of resident permits for apartment dwellers.
Mr. Depp?
I'm assuming the notice of motion is still valid and you are debating that. I'll leave it there, Mayor, and wait for the motion to go through.
Yeah. Councillor Villela.
Mr Mayor, if I could just ask a question, I mean, maybe Councillor Lawrence can answer it. Would Bedford Road, that area that he's referring to, maybe also involve employees who work on Broadway, people who need to park there? Because I have heard some concerns regarding some restrictions there, or would that area, because I'm thinking if that were the case, to consult with the community and also employees and shops along Broadway.
Happy to take traders and
Traders,
and employees as being part of the community, but
Yeah, but just because there have been some concerns raised to me regarding that.
but just through you, Mr Mayor, obviously the current 1 hour and 2 hour limits that have been there are in relation to both commuter parking and employee parking and customer parking.
Okay, so given that you're the person that's moving and Councillor Villela is seconding, do you have any additional points that you'd like to raise in relation to this? Because if it is, and I get the sense that everyone's pretty much in agreement to examine this, I propose to put it to the vote. Yep. So all those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, next item is also in your name, Councillor Lawrence, 9.7, fair relief.
Mr Mayor, I'd seek the indulgence of the meeting to withdraw this because I'm currently looking at some other information here and bringing it back as a GB item.
All right. We'll take that as read then. Move to 9.8, which is also in your name. Additional lights for Donna.
Mr Mayor, again, I'd seek to withdraw this one because I need to deal with this as a GB item.
All right.
I've been advised.
Thank you. We'll take that as read then. Now, next item is 9.9, which is in the name of Councillor Greco, resettle refugees.
Thank you, Mr.
Happy
Mayor.
to second it, Mr Mayor.
So just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, and this motion is in light of the federal government's announcement in regards to allowing to resettle 12,000 refugees in Australia. And as in the past, Darebin's always carried its weight, actually even beyond its weight in terms of welcoming refugees into our city. As we know, our city is very welcoming to refugees because of the history of the work and the legacy. So they'll be spread right across Australia, but we can expect quite an intake here in the city there. So what this resolution does is that basically prepares the ground. It
Comes with that from our experience. So I'll be foreshadowing, Mr Mayor, that we consider a financial contribution, because if we're going to provide support and services after some discussions with the relevant agencies, we might need to commit some financial resources. My understanding is that there are the NGOs that help with the accommodation, and there's a limited time where they provide accommodation, and then pretty much, you know, they have to fend for themselves. So there will be a lot to do when that fend for themselves phase sets in, if the same pattern is followed. We have got a very good reputation out there, Mr Mayor, that Darebin has the services, the support, the goodwill, and the history. So I think that our community really welcome this. And I also want to commend the point number 5 regarding promoting, communicating our commitment, because I'm sure that there are lots of people in the community and organisations that would like to extend their support.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right. I'll take this as a sentiment of the council and put it to the vote. All those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. So, councillors,
Mr
in
Mayor.
regard to the deferment of 10, 11 and 12,
Yes, I did.
close the meeting.
It's done.
I'm
We've
just,
done it.
Pardon?
We did it.
Oh, you've done it?
Yep.
Oh, okay,
But
apologies.
with the procedural motion at the start.
Oh, okay, apologies.
So, councillors, what we'll do, we'll call for a 5-minute recess and then begin with the meeting of the 5th of October. Thank you.
Okay. Tim, in relation to these,
Sorry, this is carry on.
I think there's an issue there. Yeah, I know. But I do think that one there,
It should be a criteria of 5 or 10%.
I think we need to look at yes.
It's actually hard to get volunteers. $7,000
Okay.
I need to check the study in there. You all, the 1,700. Why is that? Because I was wondering if it said why the government. And when you said Tony Adams, stuff. And when,
Yeah, I remember that. I had to change it.
If we finish too early, it's poor governance. If we go too late, it's too poor governance. And if we defer anything, it's poor governance.
Councillors, if you may resume your seats. We have arrived at the appointed hour for the actual meeting for tonight,
Oh no, apparently member
which is the council meeting of the 5th of October.
emptied this.
The membership is as listed. We do, of course, have 2 on leave, 3. Are there any disclosures or conflicts of interest at this time? Councillor Lowe.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I have one. It's in relation to agenda item 9.1 Preston Market, and it's a direct interest because the Preston Market sponsored Munda Munda DVD. I'll now be exiting the chamber.
Thank you very much.
Just one item, Mr Mayor. I will note an interest in item 10.1. I've actually had a chat to a governance officer in relation to this matter. I live within 150 metres of the St George's Road precinct, so it's just an interest and not a direct or indirect interest, Mr Mayor. I will stay for the debate discussion.
Okay. All right. Are there other Councillor Walsh.
Yep, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. As I was near both of them, but it's not a conflict of interest, it's just an interest, so I can stay for both.
Well, I'll note my own interest with respect to 136 as well. All right. That being the items for 3. Oh, right. Okay, there's a quirk. I've learned something new. Apparently because we just exhausted the remaining items of the previous meeting, and because the minutes have not been formalised, it follows that we can't confirm them until they're formalised.
That makes sense.
So, therefore, at the subsequent ordinary council meeting, that being, I think, the 19th of October, so at least that sort of clarifies things. Okay. That being the case, we'll move to item 5, which is reports by mayors and councillors. Over to you, Councillor Williams.
Mine's pretty straightforward, so I won't hold up someone who have a busier schedule tonight. So it's just a general few items that I attended. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Fontana.
Yeah, likewise, Mr Mayor. Just a report for noting. I don't intend to speak on any item there.
Next slide. Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, that's that all that is pretty much is pretty much fair. Obviously, we met with obviously I have Fairfield RSL coming up tonight, and also I met with traders regarding the grand final leave public holiday as well, which is also coming up tonight. So obviously we don't want to preempt the debate there, but the rest is all there.
All right, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor, it's all there except for one item, which was I attended and helped give out the trophies at the Asian Dodgeball competition at Plenty Road in Reservoir at our Darebin Sports Stadium. And we did have a kind of fight out between Malaysia and Australia, and given my family connections, it was divided loyalties, but Australia prevailed, and Singapore also put in a good show as well as Hong Kong.
Very good.
So that was an international competition. The Australian team, which is both women, men and mixed, there's 3 different teams, have qualified and will be going to UK. So they're very competitive, and they did enjoy running the tournament here in Reservoir.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Councillor Gregor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just mention one point, which is the Jobs for Youth Employment Pledge event.
Yeah.
I attended that at NMIT, and there was a great number of employers at that event. It was actually targeted towards employers, and it was great to see employers trying to support youth employment, particularly in the northern region. As we know, Mr Mayor, in the northern region there is very, very high unemployment amongst our young people. Something that we don't talk a lot about, but the figures are quite staggering once you get into understanding exactly what the unemployment levels are. So it's an ongoing campaign that was particularly targeted to employees, to employers, and the campaign will be ongoing.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Gregor. Councillor Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I forgot to add a hearing of submissions on that, but there's nothing. There's nothing to elaborate on. Thank you.
So we'll add hearing of submissions to Councillor Villa there. Just waiting for my own comings and goings. I suppose within the budget context, and of course we've got a very good fertile testbed with respect to the first wave of people who took part in it, almost 300 households, stands us in very, very good stead. And so it was a pleasure to be invited with one of our residents in Preston, in fact, to take speaks to the capacity of a council to engage in social entrepreneurialism. It ticks off very many boxes, and if you think of jargon terms like corporate social responsibility and the like, you know, it speaks to that. But that is exactly what this council is about. And of course, the symmetry between the work between councillors from the off and our officers to the successful implementation of the program to where it is now deserves the recognition, leadership position that we wish to progress going further. And of course, the committee itself, in the absence of Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Lee, having gone there, other consideration, of course, and I did make reference to it prior to us coming into the chamber this evening, councillors, but after an exhaustive process to push where we can, in terms of a can-do council, in terms of that, our attitude for positivity in that space, to work with you to achieve those mutual goals. So welcome aboard. And I'll leave it at that because, of course, there's a couple of other things that I could talk about, but I think because the relationship between the last two and, of course, the appointments. Lady in the front. Thank you, Ms. Alke. I should also add, if it's got anything to do with items on the agenda, I am precluded from answering your question directly because it may lend itself to preempting the debate.
My name is Elizabeth Wheeler. I live in Penola Street, Preston. The address is relevant because my property directly abuts DHS land, where we're hoping public housing will return one day. My question, two related questions regarding the motion to rescind C136, St George's Road Planning Scheme Amendment. So I think that's number 10.1 on your agenda. My questions, I suppose, are directed to Councillor Lawrence.
I'm afraid
to you, yeah. Yes. As the mover of the motion, my questions are: what measures are there in the motion to limit heights if the state government declines to accept the various recommendations and requests contained in the motion? And further, given that VCAT is legally entitled to overrule a section of 173 agreement, what measures are in place to ensure heights are limited in that scenario?
Well, thank you very much for your question, Elizabeth. But as I mentioned just earlier, I can't actually address the question directly because it does lend itself to an item. So I would ask for your forbearance to actually stay with us, and obviously those particular themes will be played out in terms of the context of the debate. Thanks. Next question, please. Yep, just in front of you, Ms. Oggy.
John Nugent, Epping. Mr Mayor, I have three questions tonight. The first one is, some time ago I asked you about the lighting at CT Barling Reserve. Council's decided that the reserve should have a 50 lux lighting. Council gave the residents, or Council gave the reserve 22,000 watt lights, which would give under 100 lux lighting, but well above the 50 lux lighting council has endorsed. Council wrote to me saying that they will do another light audit when the ground's hardened so they can put heavy machinery onto the ground so this audit can be done. Mr Mayor, my question is, when will this audit be done? 2, why can't a simple light meter be used at a very little cost to do this audit? 3, is this a way council does business, giving the Northern Football League something closer to what they wanted and not following the council wishes? 4, Mr Mayor, do council officers spend the ratepayers's money unnecessarily? And 5, will the council take down lights if they are well over 50 lux? Yes or no?
Mr Dev.
Mr. Mayor, if I can, we have written to Mr. Nugent in the past, we'll do that again, Mr. Nugent. The measurement, the technical people are telling me that accurate measurements will be always done summertime, that uniformly everywhere the ambient lights and all matters. Yeah, that when people do 50 lux or 100 lux, I'm also told that it's not exactly that, but it's I've been told that it's not 100 lux, even though Mr. Nugent says otherwise. So, in short, yeah, the 5 questions we will reply to that, Mr. Nugent, but that's how the technical answer is, that it need to be measured during summertime. The preliminary measurements they have done some time back, they confirm they are not 100 lux. I don't know what it is, but accurate readings will be obtained at the time. Will we take it down? We don't take it down for the reason of taking any lights down. If there's a good reason, we will.
Mr Mayor, I've got a second question. We might come back to that another day. Mr Mayor, it has always been my belief that council has an open range for their parks and reserve. What I mean open range is no fences. We only have to look in the city at Bundoora Park, Edwards Lake Park, Batman Park, Coronation Park, where people can walk freely and enjoy the passive recreation areas. Mr Mayor, I can understand why Connor Reserve, the Preston Oval, the Bill Lorry Oval has a fence around it, even the Norfolk City Oval has around where professional sport is played. Mr Mayor, can you explain why CT Barling has a fence around its outer area?
Mr Dev.
Again, some of the answers are in the question. There are various reasons, but particularly CT Barling, I need to get back to Mr. Nugent.
That's fine. Mr Mayor, I didn't expect to get an answer tonight. Anyway, the final one tonight, question tonight, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, can you advise why hasn't the council outdoor policy on the opening of public toilets hasn't been released at parks and gardens? It was supposed to be released in September. Now it's October. Why hasn't it been released?
Mr Dev.
There was a public toilet strategy undertaken for the council, and council is considering the implications of that at the moment. So they need to be released with the consultation with the local people where it affects them. They have a say, strong say, no matter what the consultants have come up with. That's one of the reasons, but again we will put it in writing, the reasons. Thank you.
All right. Next question. The gentleman in the end, Selby.
Hi, Scott McNeil, Reservoir. I was just wondering if there was anything that the council was doing in regards to the public holiday we just had on Friday. I'm a member of a small business. We weren't able to work on Friday because the boss obviously couldn't afford the wages. This resulted in not working on the weekend, so this affects my rent, it affects my bills. Is there anything that the council is doing to go back to the state government and tell them that it is hurting the residents of Darebin and it's hurting our bottom lines, we can't pay bills because of their silly ideas.
Well, I can't, just been advised now, Scott, because the question relates to an item that's before us, I might strain to preempting the debate when I don't want to. So it's probably safest that I don't answer the question until Councillor Walsh's motion is heard this evening. So I invite you to actually wait. But of course, do take the opportunity with the yellow forms if you wish to put your question in writing, and we'll get back to you. Yeah. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yep. The lady at the back there, Ms. Oraki.
Thank you. I would like to question the constant noise.
Your name? Sorry. Your name?
Oh, Julie from Thornbury.
Hi, Julie.
I'd just like to question the constant noise that emits from the new substation adjacent to Kemp Street on the rollout of the cables. How long will it continue, and can something be done to reduce the noise now and when operational with the cooling system? Can consultation with residents take place earlier than next year, next March, on the design to reduce the impact of structure in the neighbourhood? At the moment, it is an eyesore and is constantly being graffitied.
Okay.
Just for something to be done soon.
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Mr. Dev?
Mr. Mayor, that's an advocacy issue. Yeah, we will get in touch with the particular resident who have raised that. Yeah, we are aware of that issues of the residents. But what we will do with that, we will get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Dev. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if that's one more question, Peter. I know you, but you should go through the process of identifying yourself and whatnot. Mr. Ockey?
Peter Thompson, Reservoir. Councillors, Mayor, etc. Further to Julie's question, at the base of Regent Street, where Regent Street meets Gilbert Road, I understand Yarra Trams is going to put an installation in parkland, the People's Parkland, a closed blockhouse, which is going to resemble actually what Julie was talking about here tonight. I'd like to know what the council's stand is on that.
Yeah. The council has taken this with the state government, and we have clearly told the minister has made a decision, and we have no say. So I should say that we met with the local member as well in his office, rather not the member. So he facilitated a meeting with the people who are building. So Yarra Trams and the tramways, they seems to have a big say on that. The council continue to talk to the people, but it's outside our hand, and council was very keen for us to, it was considered here, and council has clearly asked us to go and make those contacts. So Mr. Thompson can give you the details as well, so that you can also advocate, and we have done that. We'll continue to do that, and they have agreed to speak to us, but they have not agreed to reduce the scale of it or the location of it, because it's they have decided that for whatever reason it is. So the details are very, very long, and we will provide that, and we will contact Mr. Thompson and the lady who has spoken.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dev. I think that's the first time I've received an answer on the spot. Okay, thank you.
Nice, thank you. Well, if that's the end of question time, then councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll progress then to item 7. So, with that, we have one report, which was the hearing of submissions. If I can have a mover, please, for 7.1.
Can I move?
Moved by Councillor Williams, seconded by Councillor Greco. Councillor Williams.
In reference to...
You might want to stand, Councillor Williams.
Actually, I probably prefer...
Councillor Williams, you might want to stand, please.
Councillor Greco, because he actually did the item on this, is that right? On the Preston Market?
No, we're on 7.1.
7.1.
Oh, here in a submission,
Yeah.
sorry. That was was divided way, wasn't it?
We're up to
Oh, I have nothing to say on that one.
All right, I think it's administrative anyway.
Yeah,
So I propose
yeah,
to put
that's
it.
what I thought.
All those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, record of assemblies and councils, item 8. If I can have a motion, unless they need correcting. Moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Villela. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you. So now, before we progress to item 9...
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a procedural motion, if I may, that Council consider en bloc items 9.9, 10, 11, 12.
Yes.
Happy to second that.
Councillor Fontana?
Oh, just briefly, Mr Mayor. The first three items deal with right-of-way sales, with all interested parties coming to an agreement with Council, so it's a win-win for both there. And item 9.2 is a procedural matter, which provides an instrument of delegation to an officer. So they're following statutory processes, Mr Mayor, so I'd consider them to move on block.
All right. Well, it's a two-step process, so we'll put that to the vote for those items to be considered to be moved on block. All those in favour? Against? All right, I declare it carried. Now, to move that they be moved on block.
Now I move they move on block.
Yes, thank you. And seconder was Councillor Williams. I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? All right, so that's carried. So 9.1.
Happy to move recommendation 9.1, Mr Mayor.
Okay, but before we do, just to allow Councillor Villela to leave, as she indicated earlier, that she has a conflict of interest. You might want to, Councillor Villela, label to give. Oh, there it is. Yep, okay. And we note the interest of Councillor Walsh. Councillor Walsh, you might want to identify what that interest is, both verbally and for the purposes of the book.
For in 9.1.
Yep.
No, Mr. Mayor, it was 10. It was 10.1.
Oh, 10.1.
I'm
sorry.
happy to.
Yep.
I've done it before, but
And 9.9.
And 9.9. I'm happy to. I'm happy to say with 9.1. Obviously, I previously had a conflict of
Yes,
interest.
that's right.
Been changed now, so.
Right.
But I was saying, yeah.
Right, so if we can have a mover, please, for 9.1.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Fontana. I second that. Councillor Williams. Councillor Fontana.
Oh, look, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I do need to say a few words about this recommendation. There are 4 parts to the recommendation. The report and briefing which Council have had are fairly clear in relation to the content of the recommendation, that there's no need to consider any heritage control on the site. Councillors will recall that a heritage study was conducted in 2008, fairly recently, and in line with the Preston Central Structure Plan. What was identified in relation to this heritage consideration was that Craig Street Oval and the Preston Town Hall were the only significant structures which required any sort of heritage protection. The market, as we know, is an important and integral part of the Preston Central Structure Plan, and we also know through this plan that an intensive mixed-use redevelopment or urban renewal project is required here. That's been highlighted in our briefing session and also in the report. The report says that there's nothing significant about the retention of any of the buildings or structures on this site. There's nothing there of importance. It's tired, it's old, it's worn out, and it actually needs to compete with neighbouring municipalities, for instance Epping and Greensborough, which are also considering improvements to their shopping centres. We've also received advice from our heritage advisor that there's nothing historical here. It's in the report. We've also had attachments to our briefing session provided, which explains that. The assessment criteria is fairly clear. On page 10, it actually states that there's nothing here which meets any of the criteria. The Minister, which we've actually written to in relation to considering a heritage overlay on the site, has said to go back with the owners and have some dialogue in relation to what you would like to propose here as a retention of any of the aspect of the market. He also says there's nothing historical here. He could have mentioned the fact that there was if he chose to do so, but he did not do that. If we actually go down the path of introducing or considering any heritage overlay, well, we've actually thrown out all the work we've done in 2008 and subsequent work in relation to our Preston Structure Plan. Thrown everything away. Thrown away over $300,000 of time, effort, officers' work. And we've had this explained to us, and it's in the report. Okay? The reality is, if we are to proceed with considering a heritage overlay, it's going to cost us $300,000. But those of us who've been around long enough know 300 is only a start. It will cost up to $500,000. $500,000 of ratepayers' money, which equates to almost 1% of rates. To do what? To actually go over what we already know in relation to what the report says. Now, the reality is it's not going to change. The report, if we actually go down considering a heritage overlay on this site, isn't going to be ended in 2008. But the reality is, what impact could it have? Well, we could actually lose several opportunities here to integrate the market redevelopment with the push. The push, which the report says, for our rail-grade separation, which we're very keen on, which we actually have in front of the state government, and we actually need to make sure it stays there. Not that it gets pushed down the side if we can consider introducing heritage overlays on the site. Because if we do that, it's going to take 2 or 3 years, maybe longer. That rail-grade separation, which we've advocated for, which councils have actually argued for, we've had briefings, and in conjunction with Moreland, that will get pushed right down the line, past the 50 serious intersections, which we obviously don't want this to happen. We don't want these handbrake solutions, council. We really don't. We actually need to ensure that we deliver the message which is critical, which is important, and messages such as, there's significance with the market, with its historical structure, is rubbish. There's nothing there. We've had briefings, we've had reports, and it's here detailed that really have nothing to do with the site, that's significance in a historical or heritage sense. What we should do is have dialogue with the owners and actually come to an agreement with them as to the need for us to consider them retaining any of the fresh food market aspect. And they've actually said that to us, through officers, that they will consider that, which is very, very important. Can I also refer to Appendix B in the report, which stresses the importance of the precinct and the market's presence. That's very, very important for us, okay? It's a key activity centre, councillors. There's the North Activity Centre and the Preston one. This is an integral part of our city. And for us to introduce heritage overlays on a structure which has no significance is a handbrake solution. It will actually cause great harm to our reputation as a council who actually seeks to move the times. There are goals and opportunities mentioned in the report on Appendix B.
You may wish to summarise, Councillor.
That we actually need to ensure that there's urban contemporary design and that we protect the aspect of the market. What we are saying is we could probably stall $1 billion development here on considering heritage overlays. An absolute ridiculous call in my eyes, Mr Mayor. What I need to also stress, Council, is if we're serious about this Council being an advocate for change, reasonable change and practical change, in ensuring that we protect our economic and our jobs in the city, we need to ensure that no heritage overlay is introduced on the market.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Fontana. Councillor Williams.
I think it's really important that we did do a lot of work, as my previous councillor has already mentioned, with the C13143 planning scheme amendment. And it is an area that even the shop owners and carers there at the Preston Market believe that it does need to be revamped in some way, shape or form. Now, having a protective heritage overlay will actually limit its capacity in a lot of ways. It is an actual major activity centre, similar to that at the La Trobe University and Northland Shopping Centre. A major activity centre is a place where you get easy transport, it's a major employment hub. It's also an area that's quite large, and we can actually have some sort of reasonable, appropriate development that would house a lot of people in that particular area that would be able to have employment and gain easy access via transport. As my previous councillors also mentioned, that it's an area that it'd be nice to see that we get the area revamped and we do actually have some new exciting fresh fruit stalls open up in the area, which I think could change that whole area totally, where we get some nice new vibe of food and connoisseur type things, or more health type food. So in saying that, it'd be nice to continue the way we've been on the path, rather than put a heritage overlay, because there's nothing really heritage about it. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to speak to them in support of the motion, but I'd mainly like to focus on Appendix B, and it has been lost in time in the current public debate about what the vision was put down for the precinct. The preferred future role, I'll refer you to page 119 in the actual precinct plan. The preferred future role and character of the market precinct therefore involves the retention and enhancement of the Preston market, number one. and substantial change to create high-quality public transport interchange, which doesn't preclude, obviously, level crossing removal, and medium high-rise buildings, generally up to 10 storeys, containing large format shops with parking, apartments and offices, except on the footprint of the existing fresh food market, which may remain as a single-storey building if deemed necessary to protect the ambience of the market, and 3-storey residential development only facing a certain avenue. Now, I think there is commonality with community and the traders about this vision. And this vision is not a high-rise replacement for the market, but a preservation of a fresh food market, single-storey if need be, to preserve the ambience. That's clearly detailed here. It obviously goes on for pages and pages, but that is a vision that was put down by a previous council, and I think that's a vision worth sticking to.
All right, Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just speak quickly to this, and I'm speaking for the motion. Look, I think it is very important that we, council vote in favour of supporting this report. In the obviously on the in July we asked for a report about the about heritage controls at the Preston market, but the fact is we all supported that report, but it has come back saying saying there are no heritage controls, and there's nothing really that council can do. So from that situation, we have to we have to support it. But I think, and my next point is, and well, Councillor Fontana has spoken to this this already. But if we want to see, if we want to see a better market, and we want to see, we probably have to, and we want to see better facilities there, and it to be a big regional market. We have to develop it. It's inevitable. And that way, the market will, and that's in the market as in the metaphorical, not the market. You know what I mean? The market will come. It's a free market principle. Pardon the play on words there, but yeah. So I think it is important that we support this tonight.
All right, thank you, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd like to speak against the motion that's here in the report, and also offer an amendment to what's been here. I think the amendment will come up. Second. It's basically to add a fifth point, and that fifth point is that for council to pursue a heritage protection for Preston Market site and seek a heritage assessment by a qualified heritage consultant as the first step in the process. And if I may, Mr. Mayor, if I may make a few points in relation to this.
I don't think you can.
It's in conflict with the recommendation.
Yes.
It can't be considered.
So I won't accept it because it is opposed. So it will have to be taken
so
out.
I'll look for another seconder for that particular amendment.
It's not a question of seconding. It's the fact that it is materially opposed to the substantive motion.
Point 1.
Look, Mr. Mayor, if I can, in the report it mentions that an application can be made by council for a heritage overlay. That in the report it is mentioned that can be done, and I'm suggesting as my fifth point that we pursue that.
But be that as it may, Councillor Gregor, and I take the point Councillor Fontana made, that is not conveyed within the substantive motion or the recommendation that's before us. So as your amendment currently stands, it's diametrically opposed to what's being proposed. There are no constraints suggested in the 4 points that are before us. As such, they are against, and in terms of our meeting procedure, I can't accept it. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make one final point. The genesis of this item was, if you look on the top of the page number 8, was about looking at the question of whether the heritage application could be made. The report has come back. The report is looking at the pros and cons in relation to that. The report is making a particular recommendation. On what I've seen here in the report, I'm suggesting a different option.
Even if I accept what you're saying, it's up to the mover and the seconder to accept, and I take it on the voices that they haven't. If in the event,
so that's why I'm seeking a.
If in the event, for instance, seeking a seconder, I'm open to councillors.
I'm happy to second for the purposes of debate.
Okay, so let's not waste any further time. Speak to item 5 then, if it is to be accepted, because we'll vote on that first. If it goes down, then we'll move to the substantive motion. Councillor.
So I'll speak it to the motion with the. Now look, if I can make just a couple of points before I get to that final point there. Look, I think we all want the market to continue. There's no doubt about that. The market is the lifeblood of the Preston Central area. There's no issue there. The community wants it, the traders want it, so we need to ensure that the market continues. From previous reports that we received from council in the past few months, clearly show that the owners of that site, given that it's private land, do not have to keep the market there in any future development. There are no planning controls that prohibit them from not having the market there. So therefore it's incumbent on us as a council to explore possibilities of how we can ensure that the market stays, given that the market is iconic to the city. It's a draw card for people to come from outside the city to come and shop in our city. And so we need to look and explore other controls that we could put in place to make sure that the market is protected, given that the current plan, and I stress this, the current planning rules and regulations do not allow us to keep the market there. We cannot stop the owners from, if they want to do something else. So they can actually turn that place into a dormitory if they wanted to, and do away with the market. And we've seen that in other examples. I'll just cite one example, is the Wynn Ponds market, where it just disappeared from the face of the earth, again in similar circumstances. So I think we need to therefore pursue, and this comes back to the point there, my last point there, and that's mentioned in the report, that there is an opportunity to seek an assessment by an external qualified heritage consultant, because the opinion that we've got here is an internal opinion. It's an internal opinion. And I know that the Minister is written to us suggesting various paths. One path was, as suggested by Councillor Fontana, is to talk to the owners. We have been talking to the owners, but the owners have not given us any ironclad guarantee that the market will continue to exist there. But also the Minister said, in his letter, the Minister also said that we could apply for a heritage overlay and pursue that particular path. I'm not suggesting that we go down the $300,000 path. I'm just suggesting that we get a qualified heritage consultant to give us an initial assessment of whether there are grounds to have a heritage overlay. And the two grounds where a heritage overlay can actually be applied, it's actually mentioned here in the report, are Criterion 1 and Criterion G, which looks at the cultural and social significance of the market. We're not talking about the architectural significance of that, and I agree, it needs to be revalued. We're talking about the cultural and social significance of this market that has been in existence since 1970 in this city, and again, it's a true landmark and icon for the Darebin residents. So on that basis, I urge councillors to consider that fifth point, to explore that possibility, so that we can show to the community that we're serious about maintaining this market.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Greco. With the indulgence of the seconder, given the fact that the seconding was more to facilitate the debate, I propose to put that amendment. All those in favour? Against? The amendment is lost.
Can I call for a division?
Yes. All those in favour of the amendment? Councillor Greco. All those against? Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Walsh, myself, Councillor Fontana and Councillor Williams. Now, we deal with the substantive one. I think we've dealt with my items. Proposed to put it to the vote. All those in favour? against, and Councillor Grego's vote against is noted.
Could I call for a division?
I suppose I did that de facto, but we can all stand. So all those in favour of Councillor Fontana's motion, or in the name of Councillor Fontana, in the name of Councillor Fontana, Councillor Williams, Councillor Lyons, Councillor Walsh, and myself. If you can please call Councillor Villa back. All right. All right. So, councillors, we're up to 9.2. Do I have a mover, please?
I'll move that.
Councillor Lawrence moves. Second. Councillor Fontana seconds. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr Mayor, we've just... this item is a very important item for the whole Darien community, obviously, because while it is in Kazali Ward, it is around a shopping centre that the whole city uses. And all of us do see what goes on around Northlands in the car parks, and the council has also spent many years investing in youth centre at Northlands to engage youth and engage at-risk youth. This report looks at a community safety project which has been entered into with the community wellbeing section of the council and the Victoria Police and the Northland Shopping Centre management, and we also heard their security people are also been involved in that partnership. And it's a very positive outcome for the community in terms of some key indicators that have been mentioned there in terms of less crime, less damage to property, which have been quantified. But it's also something behind those figures, of course, of reduced crime, is reduced incidents for our youth to actually, and many vulnerable youth, to be engaged in the criminal justice system, let's say in the pointy end. So every time we do reduce crime for around Northlands in terms of our youth, we're actually helping prevent some people going down a path, and we do know that once you engage in minor crime and you engage in the justice system, that can be a downward spiral for people's life chances. And we obviously do have a range of disadvantaged communities who interact there. So this is a fantastic start. I think one of the things I'd like to see going forward is some more reporting about the human costs of this in terms of what we're saving, in terms of those interactions being reduced with young people engaged in antisocial behaviour. But certainly the dollars, saved by the centre are welcome, and obviously by council too, because there's some of the assets of ours around Northlands as well. But it's really reducing that human waste and that engage and diverting people from antisocial behaviour, our young people, which is really important.
All right, thank you, Councillor Lyons. Councillor Fontana.
Yeah, just briefly, Mr Mayor. Look, I commend the report. I commend the officers and all stakeholders involved in addressing the issues which are noted on page 15 on the chart there, but more importantly the terms of reference which were agreed to and how to best address some of the concerns. And I'm actually quite excited by the amount of measuring used to address the KPIs and the success rate, which was actually used to address the safety concerns of the Northland precinct. Okay, but more importantly, the action plan which was implemented is one that's ongoing. And we can also see at the end of the report the financial resources that we've I suppose, allocated is minimal in relation to the benefits, the outcomes and the success of this program. And once again, I thank the officer, Jess Fraser, who steered this, initiated it, but more importantly, with the assistance of other stakeholders, departments, Northland and the local police. with more suggestions being considered with CCTV, but addressing the social aspect which Councillor Lyon spoke about, and engaging the local youth who are slightly disenfranchised and providing them opportunities to steer away from antisocial behaviour and activity. So I commend the report, and I would like to see updates in relation to how much we can actually improve this, but more importantly, have other councils look at this program, have a look at this model, and how they can implement it in municipalities where there's similar issues, Mr Mayor.
All right. Well, I should point out, councillors, that obviously we did in fact receive a presentation just prior to coming into council this evening, and for my part too, I wish to echo Councillor Montano's sentiments. The work that we do with our stakeholders is commendable. In this particular instance, obviously with the Northland Precinct Action Group, we had, of course, police officers and, of course, the representative from Northland with us this evening. And, you know, it's a template for the kind of work that we can do, even though policing in general is a state issue. But with respect to some of the work that we're doing, obviously in relation to youth, and in this particular space, working collaboratively with police, it's a model for other councils to follow, particularly in relation to major attraction points, which are shopping precincts, which can, unfortunately, attract undesirable acts, if I can put it that way. Councillor Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a few words. I've got a slight amendment to make to the report. It's just an additional point, and this picks up on what previous councillors have said, is that we write to the stakeholders and thanking them for their collaboration. And if I may just add, Mr Mayor, I think this is an important report.
I take it it's accepted by the movement sector?
No, I'm happy to.
Yep. Oh, I just saw the heads nod, so I expected. Yeah. Look, it's an important report because what this heralds really is that what they call the community policing approach. The old law and order, you know, just get them, lock them up, and the problem will go away, does not work. And this is evidence of that, where different stakeholders work together, and also with minimal money, because why there's minimal money? Because there's a lot of goodwill of the various stakeholders, and the benefits or the results are just outstanding. And the results are not just about community safety, which is very important, but it's about the integration of young people and giving them new directions and sort of a sense of new activities that they can engage in as against antisocial activities. So it's very, very important. So I'm really glad that we've gone down this path. There's been a bit of debate in the past about whether we should have a strict law and order approach or whether we should have this more community-focused approach. And I think that our officers, I think they need to be commended. I had the opportunity to talk to the senior sergeant when we were having dinner earlier, and they're thrilled with our participation, our involvement, and our genuine commitment to make these sort of things work. Again, not only to maintain safety, but particularly also for the youth that occasionally get caught up in antisocial behaviour. So I commend the council and I commend the work that our stakeholders have done.
All right, thank you, Councillor Gregor. I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, we are up to 9.3, surplus Victorian government land.
I might move this, but I have a few amendments. So I have an alternate motion, and I may have to correct what's going to appear on the board. Okay.
Mr Mayor, when was this sent? I haven't seen this today.
It was sent around late this afternoon. And
how late?
I've been advised that...
6:21.
This afternoon.
I mean, it may help just going forward that... I mean, this is where it becomes problematic for all councils to digest it. I have no ruling expressly to forbid a late landing amendment, but I suppose just for the sake of everyone having an opportunity to digest whether it's of material import or not, that we don't have a circumstance where I'm asked to create a ruling just on the basis of fairness. Now, in this sense, I'll leave it up to councillors. I haven't seen this myself as to whether, for instance, that's got any material import that suggests that perhaps that might not be a position that we might accept. I don't know. I might ask first off before you, Councillor Vella, just for you, Mr. Dev, through to the responsible director,
Yeah.
what is the nature or the import of the proposed amendments?
Mr Mayor, I may be...
No. It's not your perspective. It's the impact.
No, but just to help, the only parts of the parts in red, it's not the whole
I know
motion,
that.
so...
That's why I'm asking for clarification.
Yeah, as you can read, the first three of them at no cost is the only issue, otherwise it's procedural, otherwise just
All right, well, look,
the first two.
so I suppose that helps. We don't need it at 1/4 though. So if I can have, given that they are procedural and it looks like it invites myself and my capacity as mayor to write to the relevant stakeholders there. Yeah.
I'm happy to...
You want to second that?
If I may, just correct a few things in the motion to make it a bit more clearer.
And what they?
Because I'm moving this as an alternate motion, but with some changes to it.
Well, I'll take it on the voices. If it's acceptable, then it will become the substantive motion. So.
No, I'm moving it, Mr Mayor. I'm moving a motion, this motion, with some changes in it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it.
Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. Number 1 stays as it is. Number 2 stays as it is. Number 3 stays as it is. Number 4. Number 4 in the motion there is changed to remove and Melbourne Water. To remove and Melbourne Water. Okay, there's a bit of confusion there, and I apologise for that. Okay, so that becomes point number 4, which substitutes point number 4 that's in the recommendation. We remove point number 5 that's in the recommendation because that becomes redundant as a result of that point number 4 there. In relation to point number 6 in the recommendation, after the words reservoir, insert in brackets with a view of gifting land to Darebin Council, close brackets.
After reservoir.
With a view of gifting land to Darebin Council, in brackets.
So
that's in point number 6.
Where it says 48 Rona Street, reservoir.
Yeah, that's right.
And these are to be bracketed.
Yep. And the last, so number 7 remains. Number 8 remains, and number 10, the final point there. After the words negotiations, to remove the words for acquisition and insert the gifting of land. That's in point number 10. And remove the words, yep. If that could be highlighted in red so that we can...
Right. Now,
and the final thing that may need to be fixed is the numbering, the sequence.
Good. So 4. So 6 becomes 5 and then down.
Because we got rid of 5,
yeah.
We just need to, so it's going from 1 to 9.
5, 6.
I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. 7.
I think it's been seconded.
8.
Sorry,
I've seconded it with the amendments.
Okay, great.
That's all right.
All right.
I've got a question.
Hang on, Councillor Walsh. Let's get this numbering right. Okay. So everything appears to be in order. Thank you. Now, I'll deal with your question first off, Councillor Walsh, and then we'll proceed with the mover.
Look, just through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to let Councillor Greco speak, but I guess a couple of things. In point 1 and point 4, point 1, 3 and 4, Councillor Greco said that it remains the same, but we are adding and that land be transferred to Darebin Council at no cost. Is that the intention?
Could you speak up, Councillor Walsh?
Yes.
Councillor Walsh, the language is pretty consistent across the amendment as it stands.
Well,
it rephrases everything to gifting as opposed to acquiring or placing the council at a position of cost. Okay, thank you.
The gift.
So, Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for summarising it in those terms.
I think it's pretty succinct.
Yes, very succinct.
I got it. Yes. Maybe
So
I'll
if
take,
successful is less.
maybe I'll take the CAO's point first, and then, yep, thank you very much. Mr. Dev?
Yeah, this is executable, this can be done. But at the moment, just for council's information, the government is, or the departments are looking at surplus land, and they have come to us. They have got a policy now that their first right to refuse will come from us. Their departments have put the refusal, now it's up to us. They might consider this as a refusal. They might consider this as a refusal. And I'm just saying we will take every effort to keep it alive and try to come back to you, but that's why they have come to us. So when we go back, the mayor with this one, they might take it as saying no. They're just giving you an option. That's the worst thing that can happen. They have officially reached us and said that they are going to offer to other people.
All right. With that?
With that,
Councillor Greco.
Mr. Mayor, I think you summarised it fairly succinctly. My few little touches in this council resolution is basically picking up on on page 28 of the council agenda, which says that one solution would be for the Victorian government to gift the land to the council at no cost. And I think, why don't we pursue that? Because when you go into the detail of this report, Mr. Mayor, some of the land areas are just landlocked. They're of no value to whether it's Vic Roads or Melbourne Water. They actually have no value to them because of where they are located. And because they are of no value to the state government, why does council have to buy and provide consideration to purchase this land? The other point too, and this point is made to me by residents in the community, because from a resident's perspective, we are both residents of Darebin, ratepayers of Darebin, but also we are citizens of the state of Victoria. So we're buying this land off ourselves. So why should we buy land that is already owned by the people of Victoria? And in this particular case, because it happens to be within Darebin's confines, why should we buy land within Darebin? The further point that I make, Mr. Mayor, is that we're facing rate capping next year. That's a state government imposition on us, rate capping. So, and the state government can do that in all its reason, and it can justify itself doing that. But here's an opportunity to say to the state government, look, you're rate capping us, so we're going to have less funds. Well, at least give us a break in terms of this exchange of land, which is already on our within our boundaries. And why can't we have it as a gift? Because the land is not that council is going to profit from that land.
No.
That land is going to be used for what is currently being used for, which is public open space. And the final point I would make, Mr. Mayor, is that the land that we're taking, or that the state government is talking about, we're also suggesting here, and I thank the officers for this, of a swap in relation to the Preston Girls High School, where we have part of that land there on our title, without name on it, with the Ruthin School. And so there can be a swap there. So there's no net exchange between the Darebin Council and the And if I could just end on this point, Mr. Mayor. See, this cost us to do that. The money, the bucket of money where this comes from, it's actually articulated in the report, is money that we have to spend on open space, whether to acquire land or to improve that land. And my reasoning is, Mr. Mayor, is that rather than acquiring that land, which is already there, we should use that money in that special bucket of to actually improve the land, to put slides and play equipment for kids, rather than just waste it in a wasted way, giving this money over to the state government and then asking our ratepayers to give us more money in order to put play equipment on those particular sites.
Thank you very much, Councillor Greco. Councillor Lawrence is the seconder.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank the officers who did go through this list of land that the state government are putting on offer, public land, and there was detailed discussions with councillors prioritising the needs of council and our community for this land. Some of it you'll see is service areas, some of it's a major public open space like the former Ruthven Primary School and Reservoir, other of it's important little links in our open space network. So there's no doubt that what we've detailed are needed pieces of land to enhance the lifestyles and the living standards, living conditions of people in Darebin. But I raised to second Councillor Greco's motion because I'm reminded in other places, marginal seats for instance, both the Liberal Party promised 15 hectares in Vermont to be transferred from a former Hillsvale Freeway Reserve to public open space without cost to their community, and Labor, I believe, promised up to 35 hectares there in the same location. So I am sort of, when I look at these small amounts, and the hectares involved are actually far less than the 15 hectares promised, obviously, in the heat of a marginal seat campaign. But I do wonder, are we citizens of Victoria, where state governments can talk about livability, can talk about having a city with open space and services available to people, yet its departments are trying to sell off open space to the highest bidder. So I'm sort of quite happy to start as a negotiation point that the Victorian government may like to read its own documents about livability and start to come and talk to Darebin about it.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Billard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to thank the officers for this report and the commitment to progressing this particular issue. Look, in addition to, I think what we need to, just to continue on the point that Councillor Gaetano Greco and Councillor Lawrence made about this is public land. We shouldn't have to, pay for it twice. The citizens shouldn't, sorry. And the inequities with some safe labour seats and all that brings with it. I think we've been a little bit too compliant, Mr. Mayor, as a council. I think. I really do think that we need to raise maybe the residents' awareness around this issue. I think we need to have our own little campaign around this. This particular matter, apart from maybe Ruthven Primary or the former Ruthven Primary School, I think is not known there to the broader community in terms of, in fact, this is the first we've seen of the report ourselves. But I really do think whatever council decides tonight, and obviously I wholeheartedly support as a negotiation point, but also as a point of principle, Mr. Mayor, that really the citizens of the residents of Darebin and the citizens of Victoria who live in Darebin, and more specifically, Reservoir, the pulse, if you like, of Labor heartland in the safe labour seat, both state and federal, is that this really should be gifted to its residents. Plus, Mr. Mayor, we know that there is a deficiency of open space in the northern part of Darebin. So, we hear a lot of rhetoric from the state Labor government and well, I don't know about the new federal government, but definitely the state Labor government about, you know, greening our environment, etc., etc. Well, we do need to push all the buttons when we negotiate, but I think it's important that the state Labor government knows, and more particularly our local members, that the community's onto it. So it might be worth considering, you know, communicating this through our various channels, and hopefully maybe the local media will pick up on it, whichever way we vote tonight, to really raise this issue out there in the community. I think the people need to know, and the state government and our local member need to know that the community knows. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I want to speak against the additional points proposed by Councillor Greco. First of all, I think we need to be realistic and practical that we're actually asking departments who actually have ownership of these sites. It might be correct to say it is public land, but they've actually got ownership on title or for whatever point of identification. But we're saying, look, we want your land and we give you nothing for it. Now, I'm not too sure what sort of message that is sending. We need to be a little bit more sensible about how we do this. We've had a very detailed briefing from our officers a couple of weeks about these parcels of land, and I thank them for the report. They're very detailed, the maps are fantastic, and also the zoning. There's very zonings attached to these maps which will pretty much restrict almost anything. There's discussion about, you know, using some of the sites for a playground facility. Well, some of the sites actually have power lines underneath. I think we're going to put a play facility under power lines to start with. I would have liked to have seen this earlier in the day, so if I had some issues, I could have raised them with Councillor Greco, not receive it at 6:20 tonight when I hardly missed, had an opportunity to see it, but more importantly, understand how this differs from the briefing we had presented to us from our officers. And I'm sure officers know what they're doing when they dialogue with the various departments and their expectations of what to get for these sites. Look, I think we might send the wrong message if we actually say, look, we want the land, give it to us, and if they say no, well, the opportunity might go to neighbours or those who abut the reserves. There's very limited use for some of these, as has been explained, but we need to be very careful about, you know, how we approach this. I'd like it given to us for nothing, but this has not been explained to us by our officer in relation to what sort of course of action we need to take to acquire these sites. And let's be realistic. Most of these, they're not going to change. There's not much you can do with some of these. They crisscross over roads, they're on reserves, there's restrictions on what they can be used for. So let's be sensible and maybe defer this on for additional briefing to clear up what implications this can have with our relation with state departments, Mr. Mayor.
Well, councillors, a proposition has been put about potentially deferring the item just to assess all the impacts associated with the points that Councillor Fontana raised, which are valid. I might raise my own concern. I mean, the principle of having it gifted back to the council is not an issue for me, but it raises an equity consideration in relation to the transfer of those assets for our maintenance. Now, that sticks with me in terms of equity. Why would we undertake to take over those parcels if we have to maintain them? So I think the implications associated with the whole issue should be brought back to council for further briefing. Councillor Montana's proposed a potential deferral of this item. If, for instance, and look, I'm happy either way. I wouldn't mind seeking clarification from the state government as to what their intentions are, because I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as we think. The truth of it, we have equity issues that we've highlighted in previous contexts, not least of which, of course, Bundoora Park, which Councillor Lyons has been raising for a number of years in terms of the lack of state government assistance there. So I think before we enter into any sort of discussions or negotiations with the state government, but it's not the state government, it's the departments themselves. Right? They're different beasts to the government. I think that distinction should be made. They run their own show, but we need to push back and say, well, hang on a minute, if we are to establish heads of agreement, it must be on the basis that the council, and by extension the community, is not placed at a disadvantage. But I don't think, as this report and the way this amendment has been sort of put together, gives me comfort. So maybe it's best that we defer it.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a point?
Yeah.
My reading of it is whether it's gifted or whether we buy it, council has to maintain it. Once we whichever way we acquire
and
it,
the logical
that's
question
the way I read it.
And that's by implication, my position is, well, why would we enter into that? That's all.
But I think the report is that there's strategic justification for it. There seems to be, in my understanding, a strategic justification to actually acquire it because there is a deficiency of open space.
With all due respect, I have not heard that in the context of the debate.
That's in the,
That's in the report.
It's in the report,
No.
Mr. Mayor.
It's up to...
If I may, Mr Mayor, I have a right to reply. Could I?
Yes.
In the report.
Councillor Gricker is now to his feet, so he'll close it.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I've heard what other councillors have said, and look, I just fail to see, some of the reasoning and logic that has been put forward by Councillor Fontana. If you look at this report carefully, and if you've taken the time to read this report, like Councillor Miller has picked up on, but that's one particular point. But in relation to the land, it talks about here in the report that in many parts of it, these parcels of land, it's unlikely, for example, for big roads to find a purchaser. And that's right throughout this report, or the land is, or the particular land is landlocked. So what we're talking about here, we're buying something that no other buyer is going to buy. And so the state government is trying to get some free money from us for something that's not even sellable. So I think we have to be really, really careful about how we pursue this. And I take the point that was mentioned by the CEO, and is that that we don't want to sort of trap ourselves or trip ourselves about that we're saying no. We're saying something bigger than that. We're saying something based on principles and values that this land already belongs to Darebin residents, and the state government is not using this land, and it should not try to make a quick buck by trying to take money out of Darebin residents' pockets, where on top of that, they are vacating us.
All right. That closes the debate. I'm sorry, Councillor Williams. I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? And it's carried. Yes. Those in favour, please stand. I name Councillor Walsh, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Greco, Councillor Villella and Councillor Williams. And then, and against, I name myself and Councillor Fontana. Thank you. Now, 9.4. Can I have a move?
I'm happy to move this with a slight amendment, and it will come up on the screen.
I'm happy to second it, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I think we have a seconder. Yep. If I may speak to
it. Go for it.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, first of all, I must commend the officers for the report that they provide. It's a very detailed report. It's a very, very technical report in terms of developing systems that enable us to address some of the deficiencies in our project management delivery. We all know that there have been some deficiencies, and the report actually looks at that in relation to how well we deliver on our capital works projects. And it's important that we have internal systems that actually help us monitor whether we're delivering big projects on time and on budget. Why that is important? Because if we don't deliver them on time and on budget, it actually costs ratepayers much more money. And again, within the context of rate capping, where we have to be a bit more scrupulous with our expenditures, we need tight systems that enable us to really track well how we go about this. I understand from this report that the council is looking at some latest benchmarking and adopting a new system that will enable us to track capital works type projects, and that's really important. I think we've been a bit slow on this, and it's good that we get these systems in place, and I understand from the report that this system will be in place for our 2016 budget process. So I really look forward to that. And in relation to the point there that I've added, the last point there, the genesis of my motion too, when I had put this forward, is that it was put forward also because I think it's not only important that the officers monitor well our big projects, it's also important for council as stewards of ratepayers' money that we monitor it, but it's also important for the public to have a sense of how council is going in relation to major projects. I'm not talking about the smaller projects, but the major projects. Other levels of government do this. And so what we need to do, and this picks up on the second point there, that we receive a further report in November about a public monitoring process that informs the community and ratepayers on whether major projects are completed on time and on budget. And what I'm envisaging there, and I'm hoping that the report will come back with some options about how we tell the community when we embark on a major project, like for example the multi-sports stadium, that we've said we're going to spend X amount of millions of dollars, $6 or $7 million, that we come on budget and on time. And how do we progressively tell the community that we are, we're actually spending their money in an appropriate manner? And I think that's really important that we do that. Why I'm suggesting this, Mr. Ned, because I think this actually, if you like, further qualifies or further extends the notion of open government, the notion of transparency in terms of, and also the notion of good governance in relation to the community knowing the internal workings of council and how council goes about spending and money on big ticket items that they are funding through their rates. So I hope that councillors can see the logic behind what I'm trying to do here and that they support the motion.
All right, thank you, Councillor.
Just a question.
Councillor
Councillor Greco has introduced another point. He's actually spoken about a process that we may have to consider. A question for you to see, do we have to maybe consider a mechanism or a new program to assess this? Is there going to be a financial contribution or something we need to consider in order to introduce this or not?
Mr. Deb?
I don't think so. That is asking for a report. We'll bring that report, and councillors, which was considered in the audit committee today, that we are well ahead of the budget for the project.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to report. This is about the mechanism, how we are going to report. We'll come back to council.
Okay. Councillor Walsh.
Hi, look, I've got a suggested amendment. So if not, I'll butcher this sort of it then. Would Councillor Greco consider putting the idea?
Could you speak up, Councillor?
As a late motion at the MAB State Council that we call on councils to be publicly transparent about their.
I'm sure there are other motions, but this ad hocery, Councillor Walsh, is not acceptable. I think in the context of any report, we need to balance that in relation to the timelines for getting motions to the MAB Council. And I don't know the process in regards to that. Whether, for instance, we've still got time. I see heads shaking, saying that we've run out of time. So thank you, Councillor Walsh. You may have to wait for the next year's MAB State Council. Thank you. So, the seconder, please.
I've got nothing further to add.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vella. I appreciate it. I propose to put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Now, we're up to 9.5. No, sorry, 9.4, Capital Works. No, we did that, sorry. My apologies. Sort of lost my way a little bit there. Sorry, 9.5, the Darabin Natural Heritage Strategy.
Yes, I'll move that.
Councillor Lyons moves.
Happy to second
Councillor
it,
Lyons
Mr. Mayor.
seconds. Councillor Lyons.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This work, I'd firstly like to commend officers and also our consultation groups who have had input into this strategy, and obviously this is a comprehensive natural heritage strategy that takes into a range of other policies that we're looking at. Obviously the work that's been going on the Urban Creek corridors with Merry Creek Management Committee, with the Darabin Creek Management Committee, Friends of Edgars Creek, with community groups at Edwards Park Lake, and obviously Bundoora Park as well, and Darabin's urban forest strategy. So the critical things in terms of understanding natural heritage of the City of Darabin, of course, is understanding the scope of remnant vegetation that does exist. That's been documented in the past and it's included in the reports here. But also the native fauna that is coming back with urban renewal, with urban revegetation that's occurring on our creeks and around our parks, and as part of our urban forest strategy to reforest many parts of our area. But also of interest here is for a community and councillors to understand the land management that goes with that. And I note in clause 58, I think it's got here, training for councillors as well as staff on the management of land. And I know some councillors have been to the burn-offs at the grasslands and participated in some of those skills.
Starting them or trying to extend?
Myself included. But also of interest is, looking at the report, is both the regional and the nationally significant pieces of geology in the city. Now, ones I return to, there are of course the Northcote Gorge on the Merry Creek in the south of the city, but I would note of 26 nationally significant sites, most of them are actually in Latrobe Ward, and a significant amount of them are associated with the Mount Cooper and Bundoora Park. And the most significant thing there, of course, is that is an extrusion or an old volcano there with volcanic extrusions. And the second interesting thing in terms of the geology there is the Silcrete site that's associated with that. And what that's associated with is stone that was used as stone tools by Aboriginal people for tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. So Mount Cooper site was a major site in terms of that kind of social or economic activity by Aboriginal people, and it's because of the unique geology there where the volcanic extrusions under heat actually transformed some of the stone there so it could be used for sharp tools and sharp implements. So there is a great depth to our natural heritage. There are many groups, friends groups, that are now contributing to preserving it, obviously Darebin Parklands and others, and I fully commend this report to the Council.
All right, thank you, Councillor Lyons. Councillor Villota, as the seconder.
No, nothing further to add, Mr Mayor. I think it's speaks for the document.
All right, I think the sentiment's there for it to be put. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item, Councillor Villota, your feet on 9.6.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Seconder? Councillor Gregor seconds.
Thank you, Councillor Gregor. Look, this is the adoption of the Leisure Services Action Plan 2015-2020. Just to recap, it's actually part of the leisure strategy, which is for 2010-2020. That's the overarching 10-year plan, and what we're considering tonight is the 2015 to 2020 Leisure Action Plan. So it's a subset of our leisure overall leisure strategy. Now, the focus of our action plan is on page 44. As you can see, some of the dot points there summarise the emphasis that we want that the strategy, that the action plan has. One of the main elements is increasing female participation, but in addition to that, it looks at things like basically increasing the participation and access to our sporting facilities and the broad definition of leisure for all groups and also the more marginalised. You know, what Council seeks to do, I think, overall, Mr Mayor, is create a level playing field, is to enable, as an enabler for people who probably can't normally access such activities. And so what this does is, make sure that maybe our services are accessible to the disadvantaged, are accessible to the elderly, are accessible to other groups that may need some support. So I'm happy to recommend the strategy, the action plan. Mr Mayor, I think what the aim is encapsulated by the following paragraph, and I'd like to read out that we know the groups most least likely to participate in physical activity are women, people of lower socio-economic status, older adults, people from overseas, people with a disability, Indigenous Australians. So what our strategy / action plan does is try to implement actions that will increase their participation.
Very good.
And I'm really proud of this. It's what I think we need to be mindful of, Mr. Mayor, and if you have a look at the action plan, a lot of the goals we set, or a lot of our targets and high priorities are with the existing resources. Now, it might well be that, you know, we might need to look at maybe a report before the next budget to see are there certain areas that we as the council wish to maybe escalate and that may need some additional resources, but that's something we need to consider.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villa. Councillor Gregor is similar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I thank Councillor Villa for giving us a summary of what this report is about. It's a very important report because we've dedicated a lot of time and attention on how to actually improve the participation of various target groups in our community who are not, in proportionate terms, taking up recreational sporting activity in our city. And so we really need to look at that, particularly given the demographics of our city. And Councillor Villa particularly mentioned the groups that we're trying to target. So here it is, an attempt for us to try and improve on those statistics and to actually try and stretch ourselves to realign, if you like, our sporting and recreational spend with the people that actually live in our city. And that's a key factor that we need to consider. Not only that we have to realign that type of spend, but also we have to realign the spend between what we currently spend our money on with what are the emerging recreational activities that the community want to engage in. And there I refer to walking. There's a great emphasis here in this report in terms of about walking and about residents taking up that as a particular sport. And so the question that becomes, as a council, what are we doing to allocate resources to facilitate residents to engage in safer and walking experience in our city? The only thing that I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, is just that I personally feel that the targets that are set here are not ambitious enough. I think we should be much more ambitious. We're talking about 5 years, and we're starting from a very low base. If we look at the women's participation in sport, it's fairly low. It's actually embarrassingly low, and I think we could have been a little bit more ambitious. But I take the officer's recommendation in terms of us trying to step our way through in meeting those targets. And I really hope that we're able to actually exceed the targets that are there. The only thing that I would add, Mr. Mayor, and I want to suggest this as an amendment to the mover, is that it talks about here about 5-year targets, but in the report I did not see how we're going to track against those targets on an annual basis. So if I could put forward an amendment, which will be that the council receive annual reports on how council is achieving our stated targets. So I'd like to add that as an additional point, because what that will enable us to do is to say, okay, that's our target in 5 years, and I can point to some examples where
may wish to summarise, Councillor
Gregor. It's going to be a 15% increase in female participation in organised sport by 2020.
Yes.
But how are we going to track that?
Yep.
So in the first year, what does that mean? What does that translate into numbers? Second year, third year, fourth year. So that along the way, we don't want to get to 2020, and I'll finish on this, Mr. Mayor. We don't want to get to 2020 and we find that we've
I think you've taken the point.
targets.
The mover has accepted that we receive a report for a mechanism to track our path towards the 5-year plan. So I think I'll put that to the vote. I think we're all on the same page on this one. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Now, councillors,
move 9.7.
Yep, which is the last item under 9. Seconder, please.
Which item is this?
9.7. BT Connor.
9.7, BT.
Yeah, I'd like to move it with an amendment, if I may.
I moved it. So I'll hear the amendment.
Have you submitted the amendments, Councillor Greco?
Yeah, the amendment that is up there.
We have
If it's acceptable to the mover.
Is that okay with you, Councillor Lawrence?
The only question through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll just ask about December timeline.
Point 1 has not completed, or is not a complete sentence. So A should be deleted and full stop after costing? Yep.
Yeah, it should be.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, that's better. So, Councillor Lawrence, is that okay with you?
Just through you, Mr Mayor, just to the officers, whether or not consultation is possible by December. Obviously, we'll be starting to look at budgets in February or March, but...
Mr Dev?
Yeah, we can try, that's all I can say at the moment.
Yep.
Not knowing the extent of the being asked on the spot, we didn't receive it earlier, so I cannot give what extent of consultation is possible.
Mr Mayor, if I may, just to appease Councillor Lawrence, there is already a draft master plan, so it's not that we have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of work that has been done there. It just has to be fine-tuned and polished, and so that's why I think those timelines actually can
I'm happy to accept the changes. I'm just being realistic.
No, that's right.
That when Christmas comes, these consultations sometimes drag over into January and February.
Okay, so I get that this is more a consultation process to feed back into the budget process in line with what's consistent here. So I think we'll move through it and put it to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. Now, we are up to...
9.8.
No, that was carried. 9.8, 9.9, 10, 11, 12.
9.8 wasn't part of the
No,
old block,
it was
Mr.
9, 10, 11,
So I
12.
bracketed...
I'm happy to move it.
All right, so move Councillor Villela, 9.8.
Happy to second.
Councillor Lawrence, 9.8. Councillor
Mr Mayor,
Lawrence,
this is very straightforward. It is, it's basically a recommendation that it's procedural. We're just able to, we're able to progress with the leasing arrangements for the neighbourhood houses. It's very straightforward.
Okay, I thought that's why it was moved on block.
Yeah, no,
Yep.
this one wasn't.
Okay, I'm proposed to put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Walsh, you might just wait. We're up to item 10, which is the notices of motions, as they are listed. So, 10.1, which is, if I can get to it, in the name of Councillor Lawrence, rescind notice motion amendment C136. Councillor Lawrence.
Mr Mayor, I have some questions before we review this 10.1.
Yeah, we've previously have had this particular point raised, that it's not opportune to raise questions, and it's inappropriate within the context of the meeting proper, that we've got ample opportunity in which to do so. Now, if the questions relate to its soundness, its basis, qualifications, clarifications, this has been on the notice paper now for the last 2 weeks, and you know, given its complexity, and if it forms part of your view to speak against, just for the sake of brevity and saving us time, leave it to speak against.
Oh, just Mr Mayor, if I just explain why I raised this question. I understand.
All right, but I'm going to make this point clear. In subsequent meetings, I'll be asking councillors to not ask questions during the council meetings, because I think the point has been made that it's simply wasting time. And we're banking up against an extension which really, for the sake of what's left of the council agenda, and considering the fact that we've got an in-camera item, is really unacceptable.
Yeah.
So make your question quick, please.
If I may get some context to my question, the only reason I raised this question was because it's a question that actually came from a member of the audience, from the gallery.
It should be your question, Councillor Greco, not responsive to external influences.
No,
and that goes to the point of the meeting efficiency, to get the questions in on time, using the mediums through the CEO, through to the relevant director, in order to satisfy yourself, not satisfy on behalf of residents on the run. It's not good practice.
Mr. Mayor, that issue never occurred to me, and that's why, in that particular way, so...
What is the question, please?
Sorry?
What is the question?
Well, the question was in relation to the provision of 20% affordable housing. I just want to get an understanding of how actually that will work, and how enforceable is that as an approach, because that's integral to this particular motion.
But it seeks to preempt Councillor Lawrence's speaking rights, which may actually address it, given the fact that was the substantive, as I understood it, the substantive nature of the insertion of this particular area, you know, you may want to wait.
Yeah. Well, they're the questions I had in mind.
Well, as I say, you may want to wait.
But I was hoping to get some technical advice,
but it may
not an advocacy position, but rather some technical advice.
Yeah, because you saw, as I saw, the number of emails facilitating this particular motion by Councillor Lyons was central to these particular themes. I was satisfied in relation to its genesis, to coin your phrase. So we may wish to allow the mover to use his speaking rights, because he may well, and I believe he will, address the substantive point. So I give Councillor Lyons the call. Councillor Lyons, please. We're waiting for you.
Sorry. So we haven't... yes, Mr Mayor, this application notice of motion here seeks to look at C136 and respond to both the panel recommendations and the housing policy of the City of Darebin, and the fact that we have over 2,800 people on a public housing waiting list, and obviously many more locked out who are outside of that list. There's a number of features in this. Obviously there's a reduction of heights on a couple of buildings and sites along the corridor in terms of reduction from the recommendation of the panel. There is also an aspect of this motion that addresses parts of our community who do not want to see any sell-off of any public housing land, and I would note that that is also the policy of some state political parties in this state. So there's that motion regarding public housing land are based on clauses from VCAT decision on Pender Street, which was a social housing site, and that is included as a 173 agreement. Of course, the conditions in this point agreement were conditions that VCAT imposed as conditions themselves in a planning permit, and I'm putting forward that we should be seeking such conditions within the DDO process. That goes to social housing and public housing. In relation to point D, which Councillor Greco raised, the issue with point D and the notion of affordable housing has been much abused, and with past schemes, in that the participants or the recipients of those schemes haven't been means tested. So point D goes to the scheme that was adopted in South Australia by the Labor government 2011, and which sought to means test the participants, either the renters or the buyers of such property. Fundamentally, the objective of affordable housing is to land housing stock at 20% below the market value. Now, we know that given our diverse community, 20% off in Preston next to the railway line might be different to 20% off at Mary Parade in Northcote. They're huge value differences. In this regard, a local scheme itself cannot give effect to this, and we would need the state government to give effect to this in the state planning scheme, just as occurred in ACT Territory Government and in the South Australian Labor Government in 2011. But again, I'd say that I'm putting point D as an advocacy position, that if there is going to be impacts above 4 stories, 5 stories and 6 stories along St George's Road, that the potential of those impacts should actually be to alleviate housing stress in the bottom 50% of the population and not simply create penthouse apartments. So that's basically the motion, Mr Mayor.
All right. Seconder, please.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, we've had quite a bit of time with this item, and look, and what I need to say that in relation to the motion here, that it actually seeks to implement our housing strategy and also our land use strategy policies in light of the panel's recommendations, which were initially put to us on August 17th. And what does our housing strategy say in relation to our MSS? Well, it actually says that we need to consider a range of height variables along St George's Road and other arterials and growth corridors, and C136 actually does this. And the panel recommendations are actually quite sensible in what they're suggesting. I think the previous council motions actually watered down C136, and also last week in the paper we actually received some criticism from some government departments in relation to that, so I think we've got an opportunity to actually address that criticism. I think we also need to address most of the panel recommendations and also go ahead with considerations of other social housing opportunities in the scheme. We also need to understand that these suggestions are also precinct-based. Sections of St George's Road will have variable heights and also be considered through DDOs, development design overlays, and councils don't know what that is. Well, they shouldn't be here. You know, these are put in place to ensure that there's minimal interface, minimal impact on residential amenity. Look, we've had numerous briefings, and the maps and diagrams in the report actually explain most of what's been suggested by panel. Changes by council, change in relation to what Councillor Lawrence has also suggested actually complements the C136. We've not deviated too far from the panel recommendation. We've actually tied up and including some public housing and social housing strategies in it. What we're doing here is also planning for short-term and long-term opportunities. St George's Road, this precinct here, is actually a short-term plan that we need to address. C136 actually does this. Councillors who need to also understand that we have to support the current motion as presented to us this evening, as it is in line with the panel recommendations. It's in alignment also with our urban land use strategy and our housing policy. We've adopted these policies. We actually need to use those in adopting and implementing C136 as part of our MSS. We can't afford to, lose or minimise these opportunities, and these strategic corridors which have been identified to us actually complement these items. Look, we're not here to sort of contradict the question. We actually need to ensure that these policies are implemented, but more importantly, we need to take control of the process. We don't want the Minister to come on board and actually knock everything out, as he's done with Moreland, and introduce some considerably high suggestions for Bell Street. What we're proposing is tonight is sensible, practical, and needs to be considered seriously.
All right, thank you, Councillor Fontaine. Councillor Bella.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm not going to reiterate in detail why, well, first of all, I'm not supporting the motion. And I'm not going to reiterate what I said a fortnight ago in the chamber in relation to rescinding motions. And this particular motion's got even more personality and history to it. It was actually withdrawn at the previous council meeting, because there were two rescinded motions, if you recall. But this one here, for some strange reason, was withdrawn. And everyone seemed to be quite content, and then lo and behold, two councillors aren't here, and it's a rescinded motion again. So I am councillor, so because it's a rescinded motion, and I have a concern with this. However, that's one point. The second point why I speak against it is because, Mr Mayor, we can actually say no to the panel recommendations. I've read our housing strategy. We talk about height variability. Well, I interpret that as 1, 2 and 3, possibly 4. There's variability spectrum there. Our housing strategy is open to interpretation, and the panel's recommendations is not set in stone. We can actually say no to it. This issue regarding social housing, public housing, well, I think it's a red herring, actually, Mr Mayor. In terms of public housing, the government, the state government, can actually override, if it's very committed to public housing, can override what we have. In terms of Councillor Lawrence's rescinded motion, it's actually, in terms of social housing, it's actually a recommendation in the actual amendment. I understand the status of a recommendation around social housing. There's all these issues that Councillor Lawrence has put on the table should have been raised ages ago. He's actually proposing a recommendation around public housing that we don't have any definitive answers. We don't know really where we stand legally, and what the consequences will be if the government says, sorry, no way, Jose. where does that, what are we left with? A height increase?
You mentioned
So,
size.
you know, Councillor Lawrence talks about getting more information. You know, we had this information on the table ages ago, yet he's actually introduced something that is new and hasn't really been explored. So, I mean, and I'm also concerned, Mr Mayor, what this is saying, this particular rescinding motion is saying, hey developers, you know, here you go, and the losers will be the residents along St George's Road. Also, Mr.
Time has expired. Time has expired,
Okay,
Councillor.
but there are
Time has
inconsistencies.
expired, Councillor, please, come on.
Winners and losers.
All right, so, in all of these things, as always, there are winners and losers.
Yes.
I have an amendment.
Now, you know, just bear with me. Councillor Williams.
I'd just like to make a slight amendment, if it's okay with the mover and seconder, just to read, to say that we apply the 30-degree requirement to all residential zones within the amendment of C136. After 1C.
After 1C.
Councillor Lawrence.
I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Seconder.
It's already in the panel report, Mr Mayor, so I was assuming it was included in the recommendations already listed.
All right.
Where?
But that's, yeah, let's make it clear and do it.
Okay.
I have an amendment.
What is it, Councillor Walsh? Have you written it down for the purposes of the minute takers?
I'm happy to.
It's not a question of happy. You must get into the process of giving us a chance to read it.
That precinct, in precinct 3, in precinct 4, Beaconsfield Parade, between Gladstone Avenue and between Gladstone Avenue and Emmeline Street.
Point of order, Mr Mayor, do we have councillors with conflict of interest on Beaconsfield Parade? I just noticed you mentioning that street.
It makes it very difficult for me to rank these things, Councillor Walsh, without you actually writing them down, in order for me to then clarify whether people have got conflicts of interest, as stated earlier.
What's for them to make a decision, Mr Mayor?
Well, no, you can facilitate and help. It's not up to the chair, it's up to all of us. It's a collective responsibility.
Precinct 4 or which map?
I'll take that as having been withdrawn.
No, it hasn't, Mr Mayor.
Well, your time is running out. I'm proposing to move to give Councillor Greco the call. If you don't do your work, I'll ask you to sit down and allow Councillor Greco to speak.
Yep. In precincts 4, between Gladstone Avenue.
Can I ask you to do one thing for me, Councillor Walsh? I ask you to sit down for a moment, okay? Because you're wasting our time at this point. I'm going to ask you to actually collect your thoughts and write the proposed amendment down, and I'm going to give Councillor Greco the call. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have an amendment that...
And I hope you've written it down.
Yes, it's
to show a demonstration to Councillor Walsh as to how business should be done.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
No, it's fact. And I've asked you previously to respect the council and also the council officers to give us a chance to have a look rather than doing things ad hoc. Councillor Greco.
My amendments are there in red. I'll give councillors the opportunity to read them.
And it will help, and as I said before, Councillor Greco, it helps all of us if we can get these things much earlier in the piece. You know, and you've been around long enough, you should know the process.
27.
Oh, God. Do we have a big enough pain? As I understand it, I've just been told this goes over 3 slides. So this is now slide 2, and there's slide 3.
So it's in relation to B, C and D. I've put in those changes.
Well, Mr Mayor, I can't accept those amendments because they're at odds with facts.
They are. And I'm not going to accept it under the
they're not factual
rule in terms of being directly opposed. Yeah. Under 30.3, an amendment must not be directly opposite to the motion. So I'm ruling it out at this point. So if we can go back, because I think it's not limited to I think that's in opposition to it as well. So all references basically to the 27th of September I rule out on the basis of 30.3 because they're directly opposite to the motion. So I invite you to speak in opposition.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm disappointed that my amendment, because I think it could have addressed Councillor Lawrence's concerns about social housing and affordable housing, because the issue here is, Mr. Mayor, the issue here is that if it's not acceptable to the Minister, this particular amendment, this recommendation that goes to the Minister, what that means is that the fallback height will be the higher heights, and developers will be rubbing their hands in relation to this particular amendment. So I understand what Councillor Lawrence is trying to do, but Councillor Lawrence is, I think, shooting himself in the foot, because what gets delivered here is basically, the only thing that gets delivered here is not social housing. The only thing that gets delivered here is higher heights for developers to conduct a frenzy on St George's Road. So it's disappointing to me. I think we had a clear position on the 7th of September. Now we've had a yo-yo situation where, as Councillor Villela said, we adopted a position on the 7th of September. Councillor Lawrence came in with a rescission motion, withdraws that rescission motion, brings back that rescission motion. It's a complete schmozzle. It's a complete shamble in the way that we're dealing with this particular item. And what counts, apart from that, what counts here is that what residents are going to get delivered as a result of this motion is higher heights. Yeah. Which means they're going to get delivered where it was originally 4, it will go up to 6, 5 or 6. Where it was 6 stories, it's going to go up to 10 stories. Where it was 5 stories, it's going to go up to 8 stories. That's the reality of this particular motion and what Councillor Lawrence is doing. The issue about social housing, I think Councillor Villela, I think he hit the nail on the head. It's a bit of a furphy. If we look at what happened at the Smorgy site, where we had a so-called MOU that guaranteed 5% at the time, not even 20%, 5% social housing, that MOU was laughed out. It doesn't count, it's not even worth the paper that it's written on. So in relation to what Councillor Lawrence is trying to do, is a complete furphy. And also, when was talked about address the concerns of the community, what I originally proposed on the 7th of September was a very moderate approach to development, and I'll sum up on this, a very moderate approach on development. It was developments are very much of a human scale, and when we hear from Councillor Fontana about being a sensible and practical approach, sensible and practical for who? For developers or for the community? We should have the community's hearts and the community's expectations very much to our heart, not necessarily vested interest who are the developers.
Time has expired. Thank you very much.
I've got an amendment.
Now, let's hear it, Councillor Walsh, and hopefully it's cogent.
That, yes, that the sites between Emmeline Street and Gladstone Avenue be reduced to 4 stories.
No. Can we please have that up? Can you please give it to the minute takers?
And simply here in point A, between point 1A, taking away south corner and saying west corner.
On the east or west side?
Both, or so that's effectively a blanket 3 stories there.
Can I ask why? So Emmeline to Gladstone Street, is that?
Emmeline to Gladstone Street is 4 stories.
It's point of order, Mr Mayor, can't be accepted because the actual map indicates strategic sites which have development overlays. It can't be done.
Now, but leaving that to one side, it is up to
Can I ask what precinct map we're looking at?
And we're looking at number 4.
Precinct 4.
I think he's addressing this area here.
With respect to the expressions given by the mover and the seconder, invoking
4.
Councillor Walsh, can you please resume a seat for a moment?
And precinct 3.
Now, that can't be accepted, Councillor Walsh,
and 3.
in relation to your slight tweaking of 1.A in invoking Local Governance Rule 30.3, in as much as that it's opposed, directly opposed to the motion that's before us. Whereas the other one, if that is acceptable, then can form part of it, but we don't have it up on the screen at the moment.
Point of order, can you...
Mr Mayor, if I may...
Just wait.
Point of order.
Just wait for a moment until we get it up on the screen, so we know what we're looking at.
Mr Mayor, I beg your indulgence to
Point of order?
ask a question to clarify these two amendments, which are for Emmeline Street to Beavers to Gladstone Street, is it? Gladstone Avenue?
Yeah.
To Gladstone Avenue.
Yeah.
And they're also in relation to map 3 from Bent Street to Arthurton Road. Is that correct?
I think it was precinct 4.
Yeah.
In precinct 3 and 4.
Yeah.
So my question, Mr Mayor, through you to the officers, is just does that impact on significant sites? And how many?
Mr Deb.
Yeah, Mr. Rudd, if you could look at that, please.
It does. There's, by nature of the way the planning standard worded in the state, anything that's identified as a strategic site generally has a high expectation.
Well, what's more important?
And again, you go back to the origins of the...
So this you're butting up into strategic sites.
Strategic statement. It identifies these areas as substantial change.
That's already done.
Right. So, Councillor Lyons, order. Councillor Walsh. Well, the point has been asked, question has been answered. They were identified for the purposes of intensification, if I can simplify it in that way. In that regard, Councillor Walsh, if you might pay attention, I'm about to make a ruling with respect to your proposed amendment, because it stands in opposition to what's intended. The invocation of 30.3 is the only thing I can do. So I'm ruling it out of order.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. On what basis has it been overruled?
Because I'm not getting the sentiment from the mover and the seconder that they're accepting it.
And the explanation from the officer to change.
Yes.
So it hasn't, not that it's been overruled, it hasn't been accepted.
That's right. Well, I'm proceeding on that basis.
Yes. But it hasn't been accepted.
Yes. But they, obviously, councillors are able to reserve the right to speak against. Now, Councillor Williams. Yes.
Look, our officers have spent over 2 years and many long hours, and many, not to mention the amount of dollars that have actually been spent on this project and going through. Yes, their findings have been found that VCAT rulings have suggested that we've got to have so many height limits in along St George's Road, Plenty Road, High Street. And I too would like to have only 2 and 3 stories along there, but reality is that if we continue by having a blanket over those areas, we will fall into the same hands as what's being dealt with Moreland Council, which will be quite devastating considering the amount of hours and time that not only is this council has spent with our community and residents. It's very important that we already have many 6 and 7 stories and higher also along those areas, both VCAT particularly. We've tried to fight that through VCAT, but we have lost. So we can't just sit on 3 stories. We have to look and be quite reasonable about this and look at certain areas and do it in a strategic way. And having, 3 stories here, some 4-story there, and some 6 stories, which have already been recommended by our panel and also our experts, because reality is we've been told the growing population and we need to actually allow that to happen in Darebin.
All right. Now, if you may expedite things, I'm at your mercy.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just, for the sake of process and for the sake of information, I really want to hope that you will indulge me in answering a question that was put forward by the resident, of which I was seeking a clarification about. And given that we've got our expert town planner here, is to understand, Mr. Mayor, in relation to the Section 173 agreements and in relation to the social housing component, how that actually is going to work and whether that will actually work at all. Because it will be contingent on whether this has any enforceability or can be implemented. So I'll ask you, Mr. Mayor, I really beg you and indulge you for the sake of the family.
I'm going to ask you in future to put your questions on notice, because we can't have the meeting drag on because of a point that's raised which was not of yours. I mean, the point is, I don't think it's a material question, and I don't think it's fair to place our officers on the spot to answer it if they don't have the answer. You might be lucky. They might have it indexed. Mr. Dev.
Before I ask Mr. Rudd to give a detailed answer, any planning scheme amendment, planning scheme itself is envelope and intended use. There's no guarantee. For that, only guarantee is that it will not be exceeded till somebody else come back with a change. So it's an envelope. Now, second question is about 173 agreement. Anytime, any use can contain 173 agreement. It's up to the responsible authority at the time to make that decision. So there is no hard and fast rule. Any use will be there forever. Now, another thing about planning scheme amendment is council cannot decide and give options, because it's a minister's decision, cannot be overruled in advance, if you know what I mean. In any way, that's a general discussion. Mr. Rudd might have a very detailed answer on that, on the planning scheme amendment itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's City of Darebin has been before VCAT on several occasions in relation to conditions that it sought to apply through planning permits relating to social and public housing. One of the statements that VCAT has made has said that that is an extension of Council's powers. Council does not have the power through its planning scheme to impose those sorts of requirements based on the way it was read at the time. Now, the previous council prepared a planning scheme amendment for the Windsor Smith site. Included with that was a Section 173 agreement providing for housing at a reduced cost. That was supported by the Minister for Planning, so it is possible, but there are certainly precautions around that Council has to be careful not to extend its powers.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rudd. Does that help?
Just
not a supplementary.
No, it's a clarification, because the question has not been answered.
Because we're going backwards and forwards.
No, but the question has not been answered.
If I can clarify for you, and this might save time if you indulge me, please resume your seat. Mr. Rudd made it clear that with respect to the agency and the operation of Section 173 agreement, it is subject to what I would term cooperation. Can't be imposed because it would be ultra vires to Council's powers. I think it makes that pretty clear. So in respect to us entering into such an agreement, it would be within the context of what can otherwise be termed as an omnibus amendment that will either be approved or not approved by the Minister. Now, having read the newspaper articles as you would have on the weekend, there are no guarantees, as Mr. Rudd mentioned earlier. It could go by way of what happened in Coburg. But the question of trying to pre-guess as to what the government wants is problematic. But I think it helps for us to at least move in part, which takes into account some of the external communication that we received from the key interested bodies, one of which, of course, is the DHS letter. And that's pretty much the only thing that gives some kind of insight to suggest that we're on the money in terms of seeking that level of cooperation to get that component of the amendment up. Now, I don't know what further clarification is required, and also at 20 to 10, you know, it's best that we move on. Now, Councillor Lyons, I'm going to give you the call to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Let me just address a couple of things. One thing is for certain, by trying to apply a blanket 4-storey maximum from the end of Murray Road all the way along St George's Road to Mary Creek, which is practically in North Fitzroy, is not a rational move by a council that's engaged in detailed precinct planning. Let's make that point quite clear. Now, in terms of people are a bit confused on social and affordable housing. They are very different concepts. One addresses the needs of the bottom 25% of income earners in this city. The other addresses the needs of those in the bottom 50%. Now, the reality is, whether there is government funding or not for affordable housing, developers make 30%, if they're lucky, profits. So there is no way to ask them to take a 20% cut on the total development. That means that only those kind of schemes can apply where there's a reasonable yield, 4, 5 or 6 stories. So we're bumping up into reality here at this council. If we want to impose a 4-storey maximum on St George's Road, we are saying no to anyone with $75,000 per annum or less, go away. The only potential yield will occur when there are structures with more stories. Now this I'm putting forward, and I will say also, I've used the clauses from VCAT ruling in 2014 in regards to Pender Street. I've not plucked these out of the Greens policy. I've included the Greens policy because obviously it has a minimum of 20% on used housing estates, and I would hope that our community would actually support some of those outcomes.
All right. Now, I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Okay. Those in favour, please stand. Councillor Lyons, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Williams and myself. Against? Councillor Greco and Councillor Villela. Now, Councillor Walsh has inopportunely left the chamber and left us with 3 notice motions in his name. I think that might be here. No.
Other councillors can move.
I can move a motion to third.
Happy to move the item 10.2, Mr Mayor.
All right. Seconder?
Happy to second it.
All right. Councillor Fontana.
Oh, look, Mr Mayor, just briefly, I think this item's caused a little bit of controversy in the community. I think we also need to assess the impact it's had on our local trade as well. But this recommendation seeks to write to state government MPs to request them to maybe lobby or reconsider the need for a public holiday for Green Final Day.
All right. It's already been moved and seconded in someone else's name, Councillor Walsh, and that'll serve as a demonstration to wait. Councillor Villela is the seconder.
No, I'm speaking against it.
Councillor Williams is seconder first,
sorry.
then against. Yep.
Well, obviously, this has had a huge impact on particularly small businesses in our area. It affects people of all ages and all backgrounds, and I think it's important that we need to make a stand and say that we want to. We've heard our residents, and we also want to say that we need to look at reconsider the grand final eve holiday, because it's definitely having a financial impact on particularly the smaller businesses in the area, and we're here to listen to those who want to who want to do more in our community, and having this impacted them on such short notice, I think has been a huge impact on those.
All right. I'll take Councillor Walsh and then yourself, Councillor Villela.
Thanks, and I apologise.
You've got 3 minutes, Councillor Walsh.
Thanks. I'm proposing this and moving this.
Well, technically you're not.
Well, whatever. But be that as it may, because businesses were forced to close on the grand final public holiday. We've already heard from one resident, and it doesn't just hurt businesses, it hurts service operation as well. I mean, look at hospitals, because they're operating with skeleton staff and struggled because GP clinics weren't open as well, and it's had an impact on businesses. In fact, you might say, oh, you know, some of them were thriving, but really, did they make more money? No, probably not, because they've had because if they could afford to open, they've had to pay employees instead of instead of $20 an hour, they've had to pay them $45 an hour, and so how is that sustainable? And it's the little businesses that were affected. Councillor Greco, I'm sorry to mention your name, but I reflect back on
Councillor Walsh, it's important that you don't make reference to other councillors.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm doing this because I reflect back to when I was first elected to this place and asked councillors what was important to them, and the thing that came from Councillor Greco and Councillor Owens and a lot of councillors is, what are we doing for the little guy? And well, little guy, little woman, whatever. But this is exactly it. We're giving something to the small bit by advocating on the behalf of the small businesses in our community. The public holiday is not a good idea. It's hurting Victorians, and the government did it in an ad hoc way. And we've already seen tweets from. And we've already seen stuff, comments from the Prime Minister about...
You may wish to summarise your points, Councillor Walsh.
I urge councillors to support this.
Okay, Councillor Villa.
Look, thank you, Mr Mayor. First of all, this is a state issue, and I think we have to be mindful of that. The issue about the grand final eve, I understand, and I've heard and I've read about the concerns from small to medium-sized businesses, but I think we've got to be very careful, and I sympathise, of course. Lots of my friends are small business owners. I'm very pro small business, and I think we all are as a council. But I think we've got to be very careful, Mr Mayor, because we haven't really done any consultation here, and I know this is in relation to small business, but I'm not aware of any report or any formal consultation from small business in Darebin across the board. And also, Mr Mayor, and it has to be, the truth is that a lot of people love the public holiday. So a lot of residents actually like the public holiday. I understand that small business had concerns, absolutely, totally respect that. But when we write to, if this, this is asking us to write to the Minister, in order to express the concerns of a group of Darebin residents, ratepayers, small, which I haven't seen a report. What are we basing that on? Excuse me. What are we basing that on? And also, Mr Mayor, as I'm saying, a lot of people love the public holidays. In fact, a lot of my teacher friends pretty, upset that it actually coincided with the school holidays and that they missed it. So it's one of those issues. It's one of those issues, Mr Mayor, out there in the community. A lot of footy lovers, they love the public holiday. I think we have to be very careful. We haven't done a public consultation on this. What we actually communicate. I just think this was a last-minute decision to put in a notice, of motion. You haven't...
Point of order.
Hasn't
point of order, Mr Mayor. No, point of order.
Hasn't really been...
Councillor Walsh.
Point of order. She's defaming me.
Excuse me. Hasn't really been thought through, and let's...
Point of order. Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Walsh, if you can't control your emotions, I'll ask you to leave the chamber.
No, Mr Mayor. Shut the talking.
Don't ask me to name you a third time to actually have you leave the chamber. We'll have order.
And hasn't probably been thought through that if this is, we need to do consultation with you.
Sit down.
Councillor...
Pardon, Mr Mayor?
Councillor Walsh, I'm going to ask you to leave the chamber. We will not resume until you have left.
No. Mr Mayor, maybe suggesting to apologise would be better.
I withdraw.
You will apologise and withdraw.
I withdraw.
And
I
apologise. Thank you.
Apologise, not
The quorum will be maintained past Councillor Walsh.
I beg your pardon?
Councillor, please. Councillor Walsh, you've been given every courtesy during the context of your previous speaking, and no one sought to interrupt you when you've politically laced your comments. So you'll do the honourable thing and allow the Speaker to continue to conclude without interruption.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Anyway, look, I've said enough. I just think it's a state issue. It's complex. We haven't done the consultation. We really do need to maybe rethink it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, if I may just quickly speak to the... look,
I pray that it's quick.
Yeah, very quick. I'm speaking against the...
Because the unanimity of this motion is clear, and I wish to put it to vote.
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
I'm speaking against the motion, and I just want to give an account of what happened to me on this weekend. I went to the beach area, and speaking to some of the traders there, they said the amount of money that they made on Friday was more than what they had made in that whole week.
Well, Councillor Walsh doesn't go to Cafe Barry, does he?
Yeah, but anyway...
Cafe Barry was thriving in his own ward. He missed it.
Mr Mayor, could I ask you not to...
I had a good coffee.
And I was actually astounded by that because, because of the reports that we were getting from the media. Look, this is a political beat-up. This is a political beat-up. This is a bit of an ideological political beat-up. And I don't think that this council should enter into party politics, flag waving and things like that. And because the issue is that, as Councillor Blatter said, a public holiday is a family opportunity. It's a family-friendly holiday where it enables people to get together and things. And it's not true. I don't think that small traders actually went bust as a result of this thing. And I just said on this final note,
overblown.
What are we going to do? What about when they introduce Christmas Day as a public holiday? Did we say not Norway with that because they'll go bust? When we introduced Easter as a public holiday, we say no, they'll go bust. And when we introduced Australia Day as a public holiday, did we say that things will go bust? So let's be real. It's a worthwhile thing. And let's just move on in relation to council matters.
Right. Because it's getting on to 10 to 10, I don't think it's that important. Please don't. I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? All right. It's shot down.
Call division.
Yes. All those in favour?
Please call division.
No, not your turn yet. Those in favour? Councillor Walsh, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Williams. Those against? I name myself, Councillor Lyons, Councillor Greco and Councillor Bella. Thank you. Now, we have two more items. I'm assuming, without speaking, Councillor Walsh, I'm going to ask your indulgence so we can squeeze these two notice motions in before the 10 o'clock deadline. I'm going to make a ruling.
I'm happy
with your indulgence, to roll them up as one. Move them on block.
Yeah, okay, but if I can just have a second.
Yep.
Yep, okay. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that if it assists the chamber and it assists the chair. And I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. And guess what? I just need your clarification with relation to the completion of the sentence at the top of the second motion, Councillor Walsh. You said give franchise. They do have franchise. I suspect you mean full franchise.
Full franchise, yes.
All right. So if we can have at the top of 10.4 insert to give full franchise. Yep. And that was consistent with the article that appeared in the paper talking about procedure motion. So, Councillor Walsh, please resume your seat. I'm going to put those two items for consideration to be moved on block. Yep. All those in favour? Carried. Now, to put 10.3 and 4 on block. All those in favour? And those are carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Baird, we have time to ask you, do we have any urgent business? None. We have time to consider, Councillor Walsh, your GB item.
I'll be very quick. Yes, it's basically to look at getting a report into the possibility of increasing works at Durban Parklands, but I understand that there were some potential issues with it. So I am happy to, if it would assist the chair and assist the council, I'm happy to withdraw or defer this to to next meeting.
Maybe a withdrawal, and in that circumstance, and seeking further clarification, bring it back to a future council.
I'm happy to do that, but if I can flag that it's merely just been deferred.
Okay. Well, that being the case, that concludes it, but we will now need a motion to go not so much in camera. I think the first order should be to extend the meeting for half an hour.
Happy to move it, Mr Mayor.
Yep, thank you very much. Seconder?
Second.
Councillor Lyons, propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Okay, so the meeting is extended. Now, given that we're up to the in-confidence matter, a motion to move into camera. Councillor Montana moves.
Have a second, Mr.
Below
Mayor.
the seconds that we move into camera, I propose to put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully we'll see you shortly. We have one item for consideration in confidence, and we should be out with you in the next few months, hopefully.
Unlike other meetings, we will be out.
You